No one tells you this. But the most magnetic thing about a woman is often the very quality she was taught to fear inside herself. Not her softness, not her beauty, not her ability to make everyone around her comfortable. It is her dark feminine energy, the grounded, untamed, sovereign presence that emerges when she finally stops performing the version of womanhood that was handed to her. This energy has been misunderstood for centuries, called dangerous, called too much, called unfeminine by people who confused femininity with submission. But Carl Jung understood something that most never will. Jung believed that every woman carries within her an ancient, instinctive power that modern society has systematically trained her to bury. He called the process of reclaiming it individuation, the slow, often painful journey of becoming who you were meant to be before the world told you who to be. The dark feminine is not cruelty. It is not coldness. It is the part of a woman that refuses to shrink, the part that says no without apology, the part that desires without shame, the part that walks away from what diminishes her, even when walking away means walking alone. And most women never access it, not because they are weak, because they have been too well trained to be agreeable. Perhaps you know this story already. Perhaps you learned it so young that you cannot remember a time before it began. A girl is taught that being good means being easy. Being liked means being accommodating. Being loved means anticipating the emotional needs of everyone around her before she even registers her own. She learns to read faces, to sense shifts in tone, to offer warmth before anyone has asked for it. Because somewhere, deep in the architecture of her nervous system, she absorbed the message that her safety depends on the comfort of others. Jung would have recognized this pattern immediately. He wrote that the psyche adapts to survive, but the adaptations we build in childhood often become the prisons we inhabit as adults. The girl who learned to overfunction emotionally grows into a woman who confuses exhaustion with devotion. She becomes the one who over-explains, the one who apologizes for taking up space, the one who offers emotional availability to people who have never once asked if she was okay. And for a long time, this works. People praise her. They call her kind, patient, understanding. But beneath the praise, something darker festers. People often devalue what is endlessly accessible, and the woman who abandons herself to keep others comfortable eventually attracts people who are comfortable watching her disappear. But something eventually breaks. Not dramatically, not in a single cathartic explosion. Quietly, like ice shifting beneath the surface of a frozen lake. First, nobody notices. Even she does not notice. Only a strange exhaustion begins growing inside her. The exhaustion of monitoring every expression. The exhaustion of softening every truth. The exhaustion of making herself small so that others could feel large. Then one day, she stops. Not out of anger, out of awakening. She simply cannot perform anymore. The mask that once protected her has become heavier than the fear it was meant to conceal. And this exact moment is where individuation begins. Jung described it as the ego's surrender to the deeper self. The false personality, carefully constructed for survival, begins to dissolve. And beneath it, something older and truer stirs. This is the birth of dark feminine energy. Not as the world caricatures it, manipulation, coldness, emotional unavailability, but as psychological wholeness. Integration. A woman who owns her dark feminine no longer leaks her energy in every direction, hoping someone will catch it. She no longer chases clarity from people committed to confusion. She no longer abandons herself to avoid abandonment by others. She becomes contained, not closed. Contained. There is a difference, and people feel it immediately. Her words slow down. She pauses before responding. She observes before attaching meaning. She stops explaining herself to people who have already decided not to understand. This is not ice. This is the calm of a woman who has stopped negotiating her worth. And then something strange begins to happen. The people around her, especially men, start reacting differently. Some are drawn toward her with an intensity they cannot explain. Others become unsettled, defensive, even hostile. Because a woman connected to her dark feminine is difficult to control through the usual channels. Manipulation depends on emotional hunger. If someone desperately needs approval, they can be controlled through approval. If someone fears abandonment, they can be controlled through withdrawal. But a woman who has integrated her shadow is no longer psychologically negotiable. Not because she dominates, because authenticity itself cannot be manipulated. The Stoics understood this too. Epictetus taught that true power begins the moment a person stops placing their emotional state in the hands of external events. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. A woman who constantly seeks validation from unstable people eventually becomes psychologically unstable herself. But the woman who returns inward, who learns to hold her own center, she becomes sovereign. And sovereignty is seductive because it is rare. Perhaps this has already begun happening to you. Perhaps you have noticed yourself pulling back from conversations that once drained you. Perhaps you have stopped offering emotional access to people who never reciprocated. Perhaps you have felt the strange grief of realizing how long you abandoned yourself to keep others comfortable. This grief is real. Jung believed that awakening always begins with mourning. Mourning the years lost to performance, the relationships built on self-erasure, the version of yourself that survived but never truly lived. Do not rush past this. The dark feminine is not a costume you put on. It is a homecoming. And homecomings always carry the weight of everything you left behind. Over time, something shifts in the way you move through the world. You notice that silence no longer frightens you. Solitude begins to feel like restoration rather than punishment. You stop interpreting every withdrawal of affection as evidence of your inadequacy. Your empathy gains boundaries. Your softness gains discernment. And paradoxically, these boundaries make you more feminine, not less. Because true femininity was never weakness. It was receptivity balanced by self-respect. This is what Jung meant by integration, not becoming someone new, becoming someone whole. The woman who owns her dark feminine does not become hard. She becomes real. Her presence gains weight. Her attention becomes valuable because it is no longer scattered everywhere in search of validation. She stops trying to convince others of her worth because she has stopped debating it internally. Imagine sitting across from someone who would once have consumed you entirely. His inconsistency would have felt intoxicating. His distance would have activated your need to prove yourself lovable. But now, something is different. You simply observe him. without panic, without projection, without unconsciously turning him into the source of your emotional survival. The old hunger has quieted, and in its place, clarity. Real clarity. The kind that lets you see people as they are, not as the answer to wounds they never created. This is the power Jung spent his life trying to illuminate. The dark feminine is not a weapon. It is not a strategy. It is the quiet, radiant, unshakable presence of a woman who has faced her shadow and emerged sovereign. The respect she once begged the world to give her finally arrived, not when she became more perfect, but when she stopped abandoning herself. And perhaps that is the deepest seduction of all. Becoming someone who no longer needs to seduce, someone fully alive inside her own soul, someone who can stand alone without feeling incomplete. Thank you for spending this time with us. If this resonated, stay with us. We explore the hidden architecture of the soul together. Until the next video, take care.